Okay, so pork right now is really the cheapest meat you can find out there. The pork loins that I picked up yesterday were on sale, so $14.99 for 6 pounds of pork, so that's not too bad. What I'm going to do with this pork, instead of putting it in the crock pot and making pulled pork out of it or barbecue pork and then canning it, I'm going to cube it, fry it, and then can it, and that will allow me to put pork chunks inside of chili, baked beans, casseroles, anything that I want a little piece of chunked pork. And if I were to can it raw, I end up with just a big chunk of cooked pork that's all stuck together, and when you start to pull it apart, it flakes apart. That's the problem with raw canning any kind of meat. When you do the raw pack method, you end up with a big chunk, and when you try and use it, it flakes apart. Chicken is like this, beef is like this, rabbit is really bad. And pork does it too. So in order to keep the consistency of like a cube or a strip or any kind of piece of meat that you want, that you would stick your fork in and put in your mouth and chew, you need to cube it and then cook it. I usually fry it quickly so the outside of the meat will cook, shrink, and hold the meat together. So that's what we're doing with this, and I'll show you as we make some progress. It's going to take a little bit to cube this. Alright, so my daughter's been very kind and she's cutting up the pork for me. And we've taken off as much fat as we can. This is now strips of loin, and then she just dices it up, and this is what we end up with, little pieces. These will get fried very quickly with a little bit of oil and put in jars. Like I said, by frying it, you're searing the sides so they won't flake apart. You actually have something to bite into when you use it in soups or stews, casseroles, however you want to use it, gravy, whatever. So this is the first step to getting to that point, and as soon as she's finished with both pork loins, we'll get going on the frying part. Alright, so here's our chopped up, diced up pork loin, and I'm just going to put it in here and start cooking it. I want to sear the outside. As much as possible. That gives you something to actually bite into and chew later on instead of just flaked up meat. I am not left-handed. This is difficult. Off my right hand. Turn it around, now I can get going here. Alright. You can brown it or you can cook it all the way through, doesn't really matter. You just want to make sure that it's well cooked on the outside so it stays together. Alright, so the pork has been cooking for a little while. It's released a lot of its juices, which is perfect. That needs to be broken up a little bit. And I will continue, you can see all the juice in here. I will continue cooking this until this juice is all gone. And this is browned and it has that caramelized coating on it that is absolutely delicious. So I will come back in a few minutes. Oh, and I am cooking on a Camp Chef propane outdoor camping stove. My kitchen stove top died about 6 years ago, and we just haven't gotten around to replacing it. I absolutely love cooking on this. I've called our propane company. They said there's no problem cooking indoors on a propane stove like this as long as you have enough airflow around it. You wouldn't want to do this in a kitchen or a pantry. But this is no different than using my kitchen cook stove that's propane and has propane piped in from the outside. So I've been using this for my canning, for everyday cooking for 6 years, and it's worked really, really well. So, this is something that I would always have on hand. I actually have a backup. I have a second one. So if you are not able to use your stove for some reason, you can just pull this thing out. Or if you want to make a huge batch of soup, these burners cook faster and at a higher temperature than your kitchen stove does. So you can get a lot more done faster on these than you could on your kitchen stove. So I'll be back in a minute and show you what it looks like when it's ready to go into the jar. Alright, so here we are. You can see it's nice and caramelized and it's full of flavor. All the sides are cooked very well now, which is exactly what we wanted. It's not black yet. I'm going to turn the heat off. And what I decided to do for this video is to show you the difference between cooked meat that you can and raw meat that you can. So I'm going to put both inside small jars so that I can use it for chili tomorrow. But I'll open them up after we've pressure canned it, and I'll put it on a plate so you can see the difference between the two. But for right now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to start putting them in my jars. So, this is how easy it is. And I like to just shove it down in there a little bit, because there we go. And I'll put in a 1/4 teaspoon in the little 1/2 pint. 1/4 teaspoon salt for 1/2 pint. I'll fill it up with water up to here, that first little line, and I'll can it. And this gets canned for 1 hour, 15 minutes, so 75 minutes total. I like to do these a little bit separate, but sometimes I go ahead and do it with my pints, and then it's, the same amount of time, so it's fine. So here's my other jar, my cooked pork, and then I'm just going to put my cubed loose pork in here. I'm not going to squish it down a whole lot. I'm going to see it's got plenty of air around there. It'll be filled up with liquid, but it's got plenty of room in there. But you'll see this comes out one solid lump, and it will start to flake away as you work with it, to cook with it. Whereas this, on the other hand, is completely cooked, and it's not going to flake away. You can't hardly even get it to fall apart. That you can cut if you need to, but for the most part you're just going to eat it on a spoon or a fork, and you'll be chewing it instead of eating a piece of flaky stuff. Out of the 2 pork loins, I ended up with 2, 4, 6 pints, 2 1/2 pints, so 7 pints, 7.5 pints of meat. And as you can see, I have my water in there. Again, I fill it up about to here. It has the salt in it, 1/2 teaspoon for a pint. This is the raw, so when I can it up tomorrow, I will open one of these and one of these, and you'll be able to see the difference between the two. Alright, this is the pork loin that I cubed up and I fried. I pre-cooked this one, and I added 1/4 teaspoon salt, and I filled it up with water to make a broth. I save, you can see the oil in here, just a little bit of oil. I save the broth, and I make all kinds of really good things out of it. You can add it to anything, make gravy with it. This is a brand new lid. This one is a lid that I've already used once, and it's sealed perfectly. This is raw pack. This is raw meat that I've put in here, and you can see I call it webbing. It's sort of, the juice from the meat has come out and it's glued itself to the side. These are really hard to clean out after you've canned them. These are not. You can see the difference between the two. This is going to come out very loose. This is going to come out in one big chunk. This will flake apart very easily. This will hold its shape. So I'll go ahead and open it now. this just comes apart, no problem. And each piece, you can take it apart. You can, it's tender. It's very tender. But it doesn't flake apart. Even when you get these little pieces, they're not like little teeny tiny parts that flake apart into your soup and just kind of turn it into like flaked meat. This is the other one. All of this is the juice from the meat. And here's that one big chunk of meat. And here's inside the jar. You can see it's completely different, this one, compared to this one. So here we are with our big chunk of meat. And when you try and break it up, you can see it just flakes apart. I'm trying to get little pieces here. And all it's doing is breaking apart and flaking. Little pieces come apart. Look at that. And this is fine. I mean, you could use this. I'm going to use this for chili. But I know that as it cooks, all of these little individual pieces, this is what happens. They start to flake apart like this. And your food is completely filled with all these little flaky pieces, which is fine. I mean, it's still edible, no problem. The texture can get a little weird. That compared to this, where they are, look at that. They are solid. This is what pre-cooking does. It also gives you that beautiful caramelized flavor and texture. And look at the broth. It's just so rich. This broth is going to taste good, but look at how watery that is. Look at how rich this one is. And the only difference is this is pre-cooked. They both have the same amount of salt. They both have the same amount of water. They're both cut from the same pork loin. Yep. So this is my favorite way to do it.